Hi everyone, it's MrMostDaysOff from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into our podcast and also let you know of 3 additional ways you can help out the show. First, you can find and buy our merchandise at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. You can also support our sponsors popthreads.com for all your other t-shirt needs and use our discount code Simpsons at checkout. And finally, you can find us on patreon.com. Thank you again so much for listening to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and please enjoy this week's podcast. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by 2 dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we are at the end of Season 5, the final episode of Dave Merkin's first year, Secrets of a Successful Marriage. And joining me in this podcast marriage, once again, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to do my Marge scowl there for you. I'm doing pretty well today, man. I'm doing pretty well today. You know, I wanted to start this podcast off by pointing out that I believe this was the first episode of The Simpsons that I knew while watching it live that it was a season finale. I think this is the first time where they advertised it as the season finale, and I just remember for some reason knowing that this was the last episode of that season.
And how did that impact your enjoyment of the show?
I mean, I was already this time. I think we were both full-fledged Simpsons fans, so I don't even remember waiting for another episode. It almost seems like the season's never really ended. You just knew it was a season finale. But I think it put a little more emphasis. It made me want to like the show a lot more. Coming back and watching it, that may or may not change. I mean, it is a marriage-centric episode, so we'll see how that goes. Typically, they're sweet, but we're going to get into all that. That's the point of this show, right?
That's what I've been told.
All right. Well, with that being said, I guess I should throw it back to you then. The man, the myth, the Millbot. It is Miles.
You know, you mentioned that this is a marriage-themed episode, and it seems like we have very similar discussions anytime we have a Homer and Marge-themed episode, but I will say that this one does feel a little bit different. And there are some things in the commentary I think we'll get to that will explain why that might be. But for now, why don't we just dive in right at the beginning? Secrets of a Successful Marriage originally aired on May 19th, 1994. So I would have been 8, you would have been 9 at this point.
4th grade.
The chalk gag for this one is 5 days is not too long to wait for a gun. Thank God that debate's over.
Well, there's an actual gag where Homer goes to buy a gun in one episode, and he has to keep coming back.
Yep, I do remember, and we will get there. I just think it's so funny how we often talk about the jokes they make on this show at this point, 14 years ago, are still so very relevant in today's politically charged conversation.
Try 24 years ago.
Yeah, I did totally just fuck the math up on that, didn't I?
It is currently 2008, just for everyone to, be locked in on when we're recording the show. We do record pretty early.
It's funny that the political climate in 2008 was considered tense at the time, and, fast forward 8 years. But
10 years.
Or 10 years. God damn it, I'm bad at math. I've been in Mexico for a week. This is our first episode recording after I've been back from my scuba trip, and things are not clicking upstairs, apparently.
Pesos to dollars is just fucking with your head.
This exchange rate is a hell of a thing to try to calculate on the fly, sir.
Well, especially with your mathematician skills.
I probably overpaid like a motherfucker based on that shit. Maybe I underpaid. Who knows? Starting out in this episode, it is poker night, which is something that I am very fond of, I know, and we'll go ahead and shout out good friend of the show, Dr. Andrew Preseno. Him and I have spent many a night staring at each other over a poker table, taking each other's money.
Under a candlelight. Well, good times. Thank you, Dr. Andy, for warping Miles' brain.
I just think he has the ability to warp all those children's mind up in the Well, I mean, children's a strong word, but college kids, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes it sound a little better.
In this case, though, we have Moe, Carl, Lenny, Barney, and Homer sitting around the table. It's a pretty typical game. We get some raising, we get some folding, we get some calling, and then we get Homer choking. When Moe gives him the friendly slap on the back to help him clear his throat, he recommends,
"Ooh, don't try to eat these so-called chips."
As we see a blue poker chip fly out of his mouth.
Hey, he's paying out.
Does he not realize that's his money? Like, that's his betting stack?
No,
like,
he heard the word chip and he got carried away.
Well, Lenny's just sitting there asking, do you want another card or not?
Huh? Oh, okay. I'll take 3. Dough! I mean, woohoo!
So, with that poker face, Moe is immediately in, and he calls Homer's bet.
Oh, I was bluffing.
Moe does get excited for just a moment as he starts to rake in his pot. Then, the most frustrating thing that can possibly happen as a poker player occurs. Homer has a straight flush and he doesn't even realize it. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've been at a poker table with some drunk person who didn't realize what the fuck they were doing. They just threw their money in thinking they wanted to get up and leave and ended up taking all of my cash.
But I love the whole part with Moe here. He's like, "You have a straight flush, Homer. You do this every time." He's like, "I'm choking on my own rage here." So this is not the first time Homer's done this.
Hey, don't yell at Homer just because he's a little slow.
Something was said. Not good. What was it? Don't yell at Homer. No, that's okay. What was it? Slow. They called you slow. How dare you call me that? Huh?
And then we see Lenny walk into the kitchen in his pajamas. It's clearly been several hours since this conversation was started. And Lenny actually says, "Homer, you're still here. Boy, you are slow."
Something said. Not good.
Get the hell out of here. You know, we've kind of gotten away from the Homer talking to his own brain bit for a few episodes, it would seem. And I think this was a really fun twist on this concept that they haven't really explored too much yet. The idea that these conversations that Homer are having are not only in real time, they're actually in Homer time, which is exceptionally slower than real time.
That's the wrong way, but faster.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love the little conversation he's having with his family the next day where he's talking about how, as usual, I'm winning and not realizing it.
Can you believe that those guys said that I was a little bit slow?
Well, he says that Lenny says that he was slow, but in fact, it was Carl is the one that pointed out that he was slow.
You're right, it was.
So Homer is proving his own point. Homer's proving the other side's point, literally.
I love that when he puts his family on the spot and says, "You guys don't think I'm slow, do you?" And Bart immediately is like, and Lisa turns away as well, and it's left on Marge to kind of sugarcoat it to the best of her ability.
But it's one of those moments that I've talked before in the past where Homer gets the pony for Lisa and Marge kind of nags him in bed, like, "Why'd you do this?" And he starts making up words like, "Bah, sniff."
Yeah.
And this is one of those moments too with Bart and Lisa where Bart literally goes, "Bah?" And Lisa goes, "Slaw?" It's so stupid, but it's so damn funny to me every time they do something like that. Bart's "bah" gets me every time.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, it's not like the Simpsons haven't created words before that caught on in mainstream society. Perfectly cromulent words, I might add. But yeah, anyways, even Marge here is trying her best to be as nice as possible, but she's like, "We don't think you're slow, but I mean, you don't go to museums or read books or anything."
"You think I don't want to? It's those TV networks, Marge. They won't let me. One quality show after another, each one fresher and more brilliant than the last. If they only stumbled once, just gave us 30 minutes to ourselves. But they won't let me live."
Homer clearly feels like he's held captive by the quality programming on network television.
He's taking the weasel way out here, blaming everybody else.
But later in bed that night with Marge, he does in fact realize maybe he is a little bit slow. And Marge says, there's probably something you could do to make yourself feel better.
Take another bath in malt liquor?
He could have gone that route, but Marge suggests that he goes down to the adult education center to sign up for some school, essentially. Take some adult education classes, and maybe he'll feel a little bit smarter.
Oh, and how is education supposed to make me feel smarter? Besides, every time I learn something new, it pushes some old stuff out of my brain. Remember when I took that home winemaking course and I forgot how to drive?
That's because you were drunk.
And how?
Hey, I think we've all had too much wine and forgotten how to drive on occasion.
It wasn't the wine, it's because we learned some new stuff that night.
That's true. Homer does decide to take Marge's advice and goes down to the adult annex of the school, and I love the sign, the gag we get right off the bat. At the adult education center, it actually says on the sign, "We take the dolts out of adult education."
And it's an adult like D-O-L-T.
Yeah, D-O-L-T, not adult, but
yeah.
Adult. A dolt, I guess you should say.
A quote-unquote dolt.
And boy, oh boy, are there a lot of options of classes available to be taken down there at the school. Patty and Selma have a course on how to melt any man into putty in your hands, and it shows them modeling, I guess we'll say, for lack of a better word, some scantily themed outfits, let's say, and immediately everybody in class just starts
She's
puking.
terrorizing a piece of red lingerie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Immediately everybody just starts puking.
And they're all women in that class, too.
I love to. At this point, I'd like to remind everyone that there are no refunds. As Patty lights a cigarette.
Hey, smart business women there.
My absolute favorite class, and the one that I would take if given the option, is what Mo is teaching.
Absolutely.
It's self-defense through dance battle, I believe, basically, or
gangsta rap
battle, something like that. He's teaching them how to be a fly girl, is what he's doing. In fact, it even starts out, say some gangster is dissing your fly girl, you just give him one of these.
Boom, 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 boom.
And Mo immediately starts doing all sorts of we'll call it aggressive breakdance maneuvers. He eventually lands a flip that ends with him busting out a shotgun and starts wildly shooting into the air.
We have to say something here, man. Mo's had a very interesting season this year. I feel like there's so many stories we didn't get to see involving Mo that had some really great aspects to it. Like when he was reading stories to the homeless and at the homeless shelter.
I believe this was the season he was smuggling pandas.
Yeah, there's a lot of storylines this season with Mo that I wish we could have seen play out a little more.
I'm with you on that one. We've talked a lot about interesting side characters and their relevance to the town of Springfield, and arguably nobody has done more interesting things than Mo has, and maybe that'll be relevant on something we talk about on the finale spectacular next week, Richie.
Well, and also, I think this is going to be the first episode where we actually see him try to make a move on Marge, too. So I didn't realize that started this far back, but I believe this is the first episode he does that in.
Oh my god.
Not to get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, it's getting way ahead, but I just love how oblivious Homer is to the idea that Mo's trying to hit on his woman. He's just like, oh, hey buddy, how are you? And he has absolutely no clue, but that is
And he doesn't even call her Midge yet.
And that's definitely cart before the horse right there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to Act 3.
Oh no, this is that one move, 500 Days of Summer. We were going to play out of order today, sir.
I prefer the styles of Memento if we're going that route.
That just plays straight backwards, though. 500 Days, it jumps around.
It's all over the place. You're right. There was one other class that Lenny's teaching, and that's how to spit tobacco properly. If it makes that gong sound, you know you've hit your target.
All right.
That one's actually really gross. Like, everybody in class is just hawking wads of tobacco on the floor, and nobody has any accuracy at this point.
But Grandpa tries it, and he loses his false teeth.
Oh, even worse. Even worse.
And when he says, getting better.
And at this point, Homer has a realization. Even Lenny is teaching a class, and look how they admire and adore him. Everybody's like drooling tobacco at Lenny.
But they are googly-eyed at him, so
They are.
Homer has a point.
But that's it. If he can teach a class, then he can teach a class. I mean, I can teach a class. Only one problem, though. What is Homer's area of expertise?
Well, I can tell the difference between butter and I can't believe it's not butter.
No, you can't, Mr. Simpson. No one can.
Oh, I failed again. Everyone can teach a class but me. I'm an idiot. What am I going to tell my wife and kids?
Oh, you're married?
That depends. Is there another way to get this job?
No, Mr. Simpson. What I mean is, we may have a job for you after all. We need somebody to teach a course on how to build a successful marriage. I'll
do it! Anything to get me out of that house, away from all that nagging and noise. Of a family of love.
Homer's big-ass loudmouth almost gets him in trouble immediately off the bat, but lo and behold, he manages to land his current life goal dream job of being a teacher. And immediately, he goes to brag to the family. Look, everyone, now that I'm a teacher, I've sewed patches on my elbows.
Homer, that's supposed to be leather patches on a tweed blazer, not the other way around. You've ruined a perfectly good jacket.
Ah, incorrect, Marge. 2 perfectly good jackets. And we see him hold up.
He's already gotten smarter.
True. I love, though, he holds up the tweed jacket and there's just 2 big strips torn out of the backside, like right on the tailcoat, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Though I will say Lisa here is quite sweet in her encouragement. I think it's great you're a teacher, Dad. So, will you be lecturing from a standardized text or using the more Socratic method of interactive class participation?
Yes, Lisa. Daddy's a teacher.
So, already throughout this episode, we can see that, especially for season 5, this is a very grounded episode. There's nothing extra special happening. This is all actually something that you might encounter in a real life situation, which is, I think, just a little off the beaten path for what David Merkin has brought to us so far. And I did find it interesting that on the commentary, he actually talked about how much fun it is working on The Simpsons for that very reason. This episode was a lot more like writing a romantic comedy than any other episode that they'd worked on so far this year. And in a lot of ways, that can bring a breath of fresh air to the writing room. And I think that's maybe arguably one of the reasons that you could say that The Simpsons has been able to go on as long as it has, is there are a lot of times where these episodes are barely reminiscent of each other. Like they could arguably be from 2 different TV shows if you wanted to stretch it that far.
That's very understandable, but it's awesome that The Simpsons can go in such random directions week to week, but still make you want to watch every little bit of it. So that speaks volumes about how far the show's already gone in the first 5 seasons.
Well, and I don't think that I could say that I like this episode as much as, say, Deep Space Homer, excuse me. But at the same time, I enjoy both episodes a lot. And one of them, Homer goes to space. The other one, he's just a pretty average family man. So it's a very large discrepancy in what the family does on a week-to-week basis. And it's just a lot of fun that it's always an entertaining show.
Well, the thing about it is you're putting this man, Homer, in both situations, which he has no right in being in either situation. So that's where the humor comes from. Like, they don't even do a background check on this guy before they let him become a teacher. He doesn't even have a lesson plan. Like, what were they thinking?
He could probably get a gun easier.
I mean, Otto paid $10,000 to be in that class.
Maybe he should have spent that money on flea remover. Or, what was lice, I think it was. Lice, yeah.
Which, that's a very expensive class, too, by the way.
No joke. For an adult education class, I think he might have got ripped off.
I think he was thinking it was a sex thing.
Well, I love how excited Homer is about this new venture. He immediately wants to go start spreading the news. He starts by ringing the Flanders doorbell.
Well, Homer, what a pleasant...
Can't talk now, Flanders. I've got a class to teach.
But you rang mine.
And we just see Homer speeding away to his next stop, the Krusty Burger drive-thru.
Can I take your order?
Nothing for me today. I've got a class to teach.
Sir, it's a felony to tease the order box.
I love how, first of all, that's a felony in Springfield, but second of all, just that's the second person or place that Homer wants to go and spread his big news. First, he wants to rub it into Flanders, and then it's the guy at the Krusty Burger. Probably someone he spends a lot of time with, to be fair.
That's probably why it's a loss, because Homer's probably had issues with this in the past.
True. Finally, we see Homer stopped at a red light, but not for long, because he just drives right through the intersection, yelling out, "It's all right, I'm a teacher."
I didn't know we could do that.
Miss Hoover is sitting at that same light, and she's blown away by this idea that she had this right all along.
That was actually one of my more favorite bits in this episode.
That might be my favorite joke. It's going to be a contender when we get here. I'm not going to declare that yet because of the issue I had with that a few episodes ago.
You say that so much, it's lost all meaning, Miles.
I'm trying to bring it back.
You're bringing favorites back. Doe!
It is a contender. Nice. I like that. It is a contender, though.
He doesn't know how to act.
Doe!
Give us your favorite joke.
Woohoo! So finally, it's Homer's big moment. He stands in front of his classroom, chalk in hand, and he starts to write out the course name and his name, of course. All right, the first thing they told me to do is to make sure everyone is in the right class. We hear the ping, of course, of a tobacco spit, and Homer immediately says, "Down the hall, room 12.
Thank you.
Homer actually gets spat on as this guy says thanks, which is, again, totally gross. Okay, class, let's get started. No talking. I also love that Homer's only real concept of being a teacher is to yell at the class and tell them they're not allowed to talk, because that's probably the majority of his experience in school.
Probably correct, but good thing Skinner comes to save him here with the, how about if we tell you about our problems with relationships?
Yeah, that'll take up some time.
To be fair, like, as an observer of The Simpsons' life, you honestly think that Homer should be a really good teacher for this subject, considering how bad he messes up with Marge all the time, but how lovingly he can always repair it at the last minute, and how willing Marge is to work with him to repair that. So it makes sense that he should be a decent teacher, at least, at this subject.
I don't know, man. How do you teach somebody to be good in bed?
Ooh, I don't know. We'll have to ask Marge.
Exactly. I do want to point out on this scene real quick from the director's commentary, they talked about how they were very concerned that the network was going to give them issues with this scene because there was a lot of dead air where they really hung on that joke of Homer not knowing what to do. Surprisingly, the network didn't give them any notes on it whatsoever, but Merkin said that a very common complaint they have is anytime they try to let a joke sit for a while, the network is absolutely terrified of silence and nothing happening on screen. They just think it's bad for business. It won't catch anybody's attention if they happen to be flipping through. But I guess they like this joke because they let it stand.
Yeah, honestly, it did feel a little weird to me with all the ums that Homer does right there. Like, it felt a little long to me, but Homer's an idiot and he's slow, so it all kind of ties into the theme of the episode.
It comes full circle, yeah.
Yeah. And again, we bring this up all the time, but it's not freaking Peter hitting his knee on the sidewalk and
for like 30 minutes,
20 minutes,
right? Yeah. Totally. So Homer starts to go around the room and they're going to talk about their different relationships. First, we see Otto answer.
My standards are just too high, you know. I feel like nobody's good enough for me.
We see a flea fall out of his head as he's scratching his hair.
Oh, you think you got them all, but you forgot about the eggs.
Possibly my favorite combination of characters here, another contender for favorite joke, is going to be between Lionel Hutz and Edna Krabappel. My problem is I'm a real user of women. I move in right away and stay until the money's gone.
Well, I'm a smart woman, but I make bad choices.
Hutz leans over and whispers in her ear.
Oh, okay, here's a set of house keys and my ATM card.
Wow.
It's the best you've ever seen Hutz put on any moves in any situation.
You know, it makes you think maybe that's how he stays in business, because he's actually smoother than we realize. Or at least he knows how to find a sucker.
Everything in the courtroom is all a facade. He's actually Daredevil in his spare time. Oh god, I wish Lionel Hutz was Daredevil.
What a great crossover that would be. I hope you're listening, Marvel. I mean, if What's-His-Face can be Ant-Man, I think it could work.
Hey, I like Paul Rudd as Ant-Man.
I do too, actually. I just think, Paul Rudd was mostly known for doing comedy work before he got that role, and I thought he did a fantastic job. I mean, there is definitely humor to that character, but at the same time, he still felt like he was kind of a badass.
Dude, that movie went through a lot of changes throughout the years before it was made. For a very long time, Simon Pegg was going to be Ant-Man, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow, that would have been interesting.
I think he was one of the writers in the movie, too, for a long time, but I don't remember if he ended up staying on with all the changes. But yeah, for years, it was rumored that he was going to be Ant-Man.
Very interesting. Well, we have another student to call upon, and that is Waylon Smithers, who says, I was married once, but I just didn't know how to keep it together. And we get a flashback sequence that is the first of a couple movie, or in this case, play mashups that happen in this episode. There are more than one occasions where they kind of do this weird bit where they combine a whole lot of different movies into one quote. And even on the commentary, they said, we don't really know why we did that. It was just, we were just having fun and it worked out. But in this instance, we see Smithers arguing with his former wife, and it's all in black and white. And this is actually a parody of the plays Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and then it kind of transitions into A Streetcar Named Desire, which we've previously seen an entire episode based on.
Come on, Waylon. Make love to me the way you used to.
No.
It's that horrible Mr. Burns, isn't it?
You leave Mr. Burns out of this!
Smithers! Smithers!
We flash back to the present and we see that Homer's not even paying attention at all. Smithers has to ask, Mr. Simpson, are you listening? He's eating an orange while he's clearly zoned out at the front of the class. Simpson!
Huh? Yeah, I was listening. Very funny.
Mo. Oh, you were not. You were just eating a damn orange.
Well, yes. Yes. To the untrained eye, I'm eating an orange. But to the eye that has brains, I'm making a point about marriage. For you see, marriage is a lot like an orange. First you have the skin, then the sweet, sweet innards.
We see the class is not buying this. Apu says, I don't understand. And I love Willie here.
If I wanted to see a man eat an orange, I would have taken the orange eating class.
Which, that joke on its own is funny, but it's magnified a ton when we see that there is in fact an orange eating class being held just next door. We see Hans Moleman, of all people. The eating of an orange is a lot like a good marriage.
Just eat the damn oranges!
Basically, everybody in Springfield is just impatient and wants to gripe at whatever they're being taught, regardless of how they're being taught or what they're being taught. And somewhat ironically, either class could have taken either lecture and gotten about the same bit of information.
There's a lot of cross-information in that.
Who would have thought? And eating an orange is very similar to running a successful marriage.
What I find odd and confusing is that I thought Mo was supposed to be teaching a gangsta rap dance class.
Well, his class probably was early and it let out, and then he was able to go next door and check out Homer's stuff.
But he was wearing his bartender uniform, which would make me think he came straight from work. I don't know. The timeline's a little screwed up here. Or maybe that's just his undershirt, and he takes the bar apron off when he teaches and then puts it back on after.
He flips it around backwards like crisscross.
Okay, sure.
Well, the class is becoming bored quickly. They start to walk out, and you even hear Homer as he sees this going on. I told Marge this wouldn't work out the other night in bed.
So something wasn't working in bed, huh?
And we are now, I would say, most of the way through our first act, and we are finally getting to the real meat of what this episode is going to be about. Homer starts dishing about his real life issues with Marge. He talks about a fight, which gets everybody excited. And he even reveals that they were arguing about how they could save money if Marge would just start dyeing her hair once a month instead of twice.
Marge dyes her hair?
Oh yeah, she's been gray as a mule since she was 17.
Oh, Homer. Oh, Homer.
Such a buffoon move. And you have to say, too, poor Marge, because 17 is awfully early to have hair, to go gray, essentially. I mean, I guess if she were around today...
At least she has hair.
That's true. I mean, it could be worse. You're absolutely right. And I mean, hair dye is a thing. But at the same time, did anybody think that blue is Marge's natural hair color? That's the question I really want to know.
Is yellow all of her children's natural hair color?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, and why do they have that weird condition where their hair looks just like their skin?
Did I just break your brain a little bit? Blue is the recessive gene in hair color, I guess.
But you know what? Telling all these personal stories somewhat saves Homer's class. He actually ends up getting everybody's attention and getting the admiration that he was seeking. In fact, he's so proud of himself that on the way home, he stops by to tell an old friend.
I went on for hours, and they were hanging on my every word. I really think I was born to teach.
Wiggum pulls up and draws his gun. All right, Simpson, you were warned about teasing the box. Ah! Homer drives away, fleeing from the cops for this apparently a felony that he's committing.
Wait! I need closure on that anecdote!
And seeking closure is what's going to bring us to the end of our first act. We are going to take a very quick break, but we'll be right back to bring you some closure on our second act of Secrets of a Successful Marriage.
Hi, it's Mike Reese. I've been writing for The Simpsons for 30 years. I ran the show in seasons 3 and 4. I created The Critic. And now I've written a book. It's called Springfield Confidential, and it is the first insider's look at The Simpsons. It's filled with secrets, scandals, and tales of censorship and celebrities. It's a great book. It's like a Simpsons episode. It's fast, it's smart, and it's packed with hundreds of jokes, some of them funny. Please buy Springfield Confidential. You can order it now on Amazon.com.
Hey, you know what's missing from your life? Yet another variety podcast. My Crumbling Audio brings you just that. Open, humorous, and frank discussion on horror, kink, wrestling, and gaming. Each week, Crumb, that's me, brings my brand of wit and wisdom to you with an in-depth look at some of my, and hopefully your, favorite topics. I'm available on iTunes, and you can plug my RSS feed into your favorite app or search My Crumbling Audio.
When we get back from break, we see Marge is doing some shopping at the Quickie Mart, and this is where the conflict of the story really starts, because immediately people start saying things to her like, we're having a sale on blue dye number 52. I believe that's your color. Marge, of course, tries to deny like she knows what they're talking about, but then Mo comes up and says, no, she's a blue 56.
Nah, you got it wrong, Boo. She's blue number 56.
Again, Marge denies what's going on. She pretends like she doesn't know and walks off, but then Edna Krabappel stops her on the way out and says, we just love your husband's class.
That's nice.
And that's when I think Marge does officially know. She talks to Homer that night in bed. And
Wait. It's kind of weird that like 3 people from Homer's class just happen to all be there at that exact moment. Like Apu, I understand because he works there. But when have you ever seen Krabappel or Mo inside the Quickie Mart? I find that like they might be stalking a little bit, trying to get some insider information because they love the soap opera of Homer and Marge so much.
I don't know. I think you could argue that Krabappel was just buying cigarettes and Moe may have been short on booze.
I stand to disagree on that one a little bit, but for the sake of the episode, we'll continue.
I think you could arguably chalk it all up to plot convenience, but yes. Back at the Simpsons' home, we see Marge tell Homer, "I really don't like you telling personal secrets in your class."
Marge, I didn't tell him personal stuff.
"Today at the Quickie Mart, everyone knew I dyed my hair."
Oh, you mean about you? All right, maybe I said some things, some personal things, but you should have seen them, Marge. They really wanted to hear what I had to say.
I'm happy about that, but I think you can be a good teacher and still respect our privacy.
Look, Marge, you don't know what it's like. I'm the one out there every day putting his ass on the line. And I'm not out of order. You're out of order. The whole freaking system is out of order. You want the truth? You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Because when you reach over and put your hand into a pile of goo that was your best friend's face, you'll know what to do. Forget it, Marge. It's Chinatown.
Homer, don't ever tell him personal stuff about me again.
Yes, ma'am. Like that part scares me too. Marge straight up grabs him and says, "Don't ever tell them personal stuff about me again." That's like the most angry I've ever heard Marge through the series.
I think that there is a special tone that you can only get from a spouse or a committed relationship partner, I'll say, that just puts the absolute worst fear into your eyes because you know that they're serious. And Marge was very much using her serious voice in this moment. I also want to point out that this is another sequence that they combine a whole lot of movie references right into one. Everything Homer says is quotes from different Jack Nicholson movies, including but not limited to And Justice for All, A Few Good Men, Patton, and Chinatown. I just think it's funny that Homer gets his movie mashup kind of confused, but maybe he just went on a Jack Nicholson movie marathon at his local Blockbuster, as was the way you watched movies at the time.
As was the style at the time. I think he was literally just grasping at straws and saying the first thing that came to his mind. So that
and it just all happened. He just watches a ton of TV, so it kind of worked out.
It kind of happened earlier in the episode where he went on a little rant where he was just he was already trapped in the corner, so he was just clawing and trying to get his way out.
And to Homer's credit here, he does honestly try to abide by Marge's wishes. I think it's fair to say that he gives an earnest effort to not share those intimate details. His next day's lecture actually starts off really boring as he starts to define the meaning of wedding. Webster's dictionary describes a wedding as the process of removing weeds from one's garden.
I really enjoyed that joke.
But of course, the class is not having it. At this point, they know that he's got dirt, and they want to hear the good stuff. They all complain, "Tell us more about you and Marge."
This is a place of learning, not a house of hearing about things.
"Well, I guess he's ran out of stories," somebody says from the crowd, and they all start to leave his classroom.
What a ripoff.
"I can't believe I paid $10,000 for this course. What the heck was that lab fee for?"
It brings up so many questions. Obviously, this is something when I was a kid, I mean, I might understand the joke, but until you've actually paid a few lab fees before, it's not as funny.
Well, and I don't know that I even grasped the concept of what $10,000 really was at that time. I may have been like, wow, school's really expensive. Weird.
I feel like Otto paid for an actual college course at a college and then just accidentally showed up to the adult education center.
He's supposed to be at Springfield U right now.
It said off-campus class where it's in one of those little porter schools right outside the college, but he ended up going all the way to the community center because he was high.
But Homer can sense that he is literally losing his class, and he doesn't want this moment of glory to fade. So he says, "I do have a story about two other young marrieds. Now, the wife of this couple has an interesting quirk in the bedroom. It seems she goes wild with desire if her husband nibbles on her elbow.
We need names.
Well, let's just call them, Mr. X and Mrs. Y. So anyway, Mr. X would say, Marge, if this doesn't get your motor running, my name isn't Homer J. Simpson.
Literally made it 5 minutes, maybe.
Oh my god. I think he made it 3 seconds, dude. Just like,
Yeah.
Oh geez, though. I love that so much. Because not only does he reveal the names, he actually uses his entire name. And literally his entire name, as we'll come to find out when we find out what that J stands for.
Well, and also, this is not the last time Homer will use the persona Mr. X, if I'm not mistaken, because there is the episode in a future season where he starts blabbing about people all over Springfield once he gets his own website. And I believe on the website he's called Mr. X, but it's a picture of Homer with the black bag over his head with the white X on it. So they'll go back to this again, so way to throw up the X, Homer.
Nice. The next night in the Simpsons' home, it's time for Homer to teach his class, and Marge is surprised to find Homer still at the dinner table.
Oh, Homer, don't you have to get to class?
Not tonight, Marge. Tonight we can eat a nice, leisurely dinner at home.
Oh, well, that will be love. What the darn?
I love that that's how Marge curses as she exclaims, what the darn. But she's what the darning the fact that Homer has invited his entire class over to watch them. Basically this must be what Otto's lab was for, to go in
Yes.
and to actually witness Homer and Marge in their natural state, in their natural habitat, eating a family dinner at home.
Apparently, that disturbing odor was the food.
David Merkin joked on the commentary as that line is where Frasier came from. And while we're talking about the commentary, I'll also point out that this episode came together as a hybrid of two different ideas. I believe it was Bill Oakley who came up with the idea that Homer should teach a class, if I remember correctly. But it was actually David Merkin's idea that he wanted to see Marge and Homer have their real life worst fight ever. The absolute worst things have ever been. And for Homer to do something so outrageously terrible to Marge, it would actually make you question, will Marge really leave Homer? That was the goal of this episode in Merkin's eyes, and it fit perfectly with this concept of Homer teaching an adult education class.
And the whole idea of breaking trust is a huge, huge deal, especially in a marriage. I'm assuming, at least. But
of course, I think that's in any relationship. Trust is probably one of the primary pillars that keeps those things going.
I trust you as far away as I can podcast with you.
Wow, man, that's actually, I don't know if you meant to do that, but that's quite a hell of a compliment.
You're welcome. It's like the sweetest thing I've ever said to you.
I trust you as far as we can play that phone game where you tie two cups together with a string.
Don't! Speaking of cups, I almost tweeted the old picture off of Facebook onto Twitter for us when we were playing beer pong with our exposed breastises.
Oh, wow. Which time?
When we were trying to taunt the other team.
I know which one you're talking about. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's a good picture. Totally post that.
Well, by the time this episode airs, I think the picture will already be on Twitter by then, I'm hoping.
So Marge is clearly upset by this complete violation of privacy and trust, because now not only is Homer sharing secrets of their marriage, he's actually invited an entire classroom full of people to witness their interactions at home.
And they're all very eager to be there learning, except for Otto, we'll find out, but still.
Yeah, that's true. They all have their notepads in hand, and they're actually being diligent students, but...
Creepily diligent.
Creepily diligent is right. But Homer is maybe hamming it up just a little bit. He's definitely not acting natural. So, little Lisa, apple of my eye, how are things going down at the old schoolhouse?
I find this demeaning and embarrassing beyond my worst nightmares.
And how's my little major leaguer? Catch any June bugs today?
Oh, me and Milhouse took some mail from the mail truck and threw it down the sewer.
Son, I know you meant well, but that wasn't the right thing to do.
What the hell are you talking about? You're the one who double dared us.
Why, you little... And we get a classic case of Homer strangling Bart, only this time it's literally across the middle of the dinner table, and his entire class is there taking notes. Bart and Lisa actually take off. They decide they've had enough, and they both leave. Homer tries to play this up as now that the little ones have toddled off to bed, but Marge then erupts.
I want this to end now.
Hey, Homer, why don't you just nibble her elbow? That always melts her butter, right?
All right. Okay. Everybody out.
Oh, she's got to have it.
Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out.
All right, class, we're breaking early tonight. For tomorrow, you should read pages 7 through 18 in Lisa's diary.
You too.
Huh?
Get out.
But I'm not in the class. Marge literally kicks Homer out of the house at this point, along with the rest of the class. Only one straggler remains.
Is any of this going to be on the test? 'Cause I wasn't paying attention.
And Otto actually leaves the home after Homer does, but Homer cannot believe that he is no longer welcome in his own home. And that dark note is how we are left to break for Act 2.
Before season 6. Oh, wait, never mind.
So once again, we are going to take a very quick break, but we will be back with the closure you desire after just a few messages.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a snack.
Yeah.
Excellent.
My name is Patsy the Angry Nerd, lover of sharks and science.
This is Ashes Von Nightmare, the mistress of Merlot and real housewife of Transylvania.
And I'm Ancient Nicole, the Ironborn and Goddess of Giggles. Join us each and every Thursday as we discuss all the characters you love and love to hate.
That's right, we go in-depth in our discussions of origins, the things that make them unique, and their contribution to pop culture and society.
We also incorporate them into battles that showcase their skills and talents. All this, plus Patsy's Science Fact, the Von Nightmare Vineyard Wine Recommendations, Agent Nicole Files, and more each week on Throwdown Thursday. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at TD Thursday Pod. And we will see you next Thursday.
Hi, I'm MrMostDaysOff. You might remember me from such podcasts as our review of Some Enchanted Evening and our season finale spectaculars. I've brought a friend along with me today to talk to you about an exciting new product.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Richie the WizKid.
Miles, did you know that most people have no idea how to get a Best Darn Diddly t-shirt?
You can get a t-shirt with a podcast logo on it? I had no idea.
If you go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly, you'll find not only t-shirts, but also Best Darn Diddly hoodies, posters, mugs, and even phone and laptop cases. It's like they'll put their names on anything. And Miles, did you know that all the Best Darn Diddly products are also inflammable?
Richie, that means they catch on fire.
I had no idea.
Help support the Best Darn Diddly Review Show by buying our stuff at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. And do try to stay away from open flames.
Bye, everybody.
We come back for our final act and see Homer still pounding on the door, crying to Marge to let him in. He's downright begging, and I love for some reason he's very concerned about the crickets that are out there with him.
Let me in. There's crickets out here.
But Marge is standing strong. She says, "You just don't get it, Homer. You told personal things about our lives, even after you promised you wouldn't. I can't trust you anymore." And as we just discussed previously, when the trust breaks, it's hard to salvage the relationship because it truly is an important part of any interaction between people, essentially.
But I learned my lesson. It'll never happen again.
We see Ned Flanders poke his head out with his pajama cap and all on. Hey, Homer, what's the big brouhaha?
Marge is throwing me out for blabbing about her elbow thing.
And immediately we just get Marge slamming the door in Homer's face, which is admittedly totally deserved in that moment.
Honey, the door blew shut. Oh, fine. If that's what you want, you've got it. This scene is getting old, man. I'm hitting the road. Maybe I'll drop you a line someday from wherever I end up in this crazy old world.
Homer marches down the street, and it seems at first he's gonna just go do his own thing, but immediately we cut to the next morning at breakfast, and probably my favorite visual that we have in this entire episode. You see Homer up in Bart's treehouse, peeking down through the kitchen window, while Marge tries to explain to the kids that they both still love them, but they're just going through some stuff right now, and it doesn't have anything to do with them. It's just an issue between Marge and Homer.
Wow, I've never seen Mom so mad at Homer before.
I'll tell you a secret, Bart. Every time I'm worried about Mom and Dad, I go to the attic and add to my ball of string. And we cut to the attic where we see Snowball 2 playing with a ball of string that must be at least the size of, what would you say, an armchair? Like, it's a big ball.
I think it's bigger than that. It rolls right over the damn cat.
It crushes Snowball 2. That might be Snowball 3 from here on out in the series. I'm not sure.
It might be Snowball 57 at this point. I don't know.
We see Bart and Milhouse are playing some sort of Space Commanders, or they're dressed up like some sort of astronaut type of, like, Space Ranger, I'll say. Power Rangers before there was Power Rangers, or at least the American version. They're climbing up to the top of the treehouse together.
Earth Base, this is Commander Bart McCool. We under attack by the Zornid Brain Changers. Quickly to the safety dome, Milbot.
Affirmative, humanoid. They both get into the treehouse where they see Homer, and he is not looking his best.
Ew! Don't mind me, boys. Just scrubbing my undies.
Sorry, Bart. Your dad kind of blew the fantasy. I only like it when I'm pretend scared.
Keep up the roughhousing, son. Without a strong male presence in the house, you could turn sissy overnight. Oh, these stubborn grass stains.
How did he get grass stains in his underwear? Just one of the many questions this episode raises.
Well, his pants are going to be torn very quickly, so in less than 24 hours?
While Homer is up spying on Marge from the treehouse, he is overjoyed when he sees Reverend Lovejoy show up because he knows that he has to push the sanctity of marriage or his God will punish him.
So this isn't a Sunday because Reverend Lovejoy would be at church, which makes you think it better be a Saturday or else Homer should be at work right now.
I guess so. But I love, as soon as we cut to Marge and Reverend Lovejoy, we immediately hear Reverend Lovejoy say, "Get a divorce."
But isn't that a sin?
Marge, everything is a sin. You ever sat down and read this thing? Technically, we're not allowed to go to the bathroom. Alright, I lied. This is my favorite joke. I will say that to clarify.
Of course, the religion thing gets you.
Every time. It cracks me up. They gotta take the piss out of things, and they do such a good job with this one.
Well, I mean, technically, you're not allowed to go to the bathroom.
It is a sin.
The thing coming out of you is a sin.
That night, Marge is in bed by herself, and she has a lot to consider. She's thinking a lot of thoughts. I mean, literally, her spiritual advisor has just told her to leave her husband, but there's still just something, maybe the indention in the bed, but for sure something that is making Marge still feel latched to Homer.
Well, before that, though, we had a shot of Homer missing Marge up in the treehouse, and you see him kiss the picture frame, and when you turn around the picture frame, there's nothing in it.
Oh, why didn't I ever get a picture? I had so much time.
He says, why not use any of the 10 years of marriage to take a photograph?
That's such a great reveal, though, because you only see the backside of the frame until the very last minute when he turns it over, and that's when you realize Homer just kissed a blank piece of glass.
It's kind of cool though. Like it's a stupid joke, but to like, if you want to get deep, if you have to get deep, which I do a lot, it's kind of that you have the picture frame. It's a family thing, and it's the whole foundation and the strength and everything. And Homer doesn't even have that soft little part right here. Like he is completely broken off from the family and from his marriage at this point.
Yeah, and it's a real palpable
if you
tension.
want to go that route.
Absolutely, and there's an actual palpable tension between these two. I won't say that at any point I thought Marge and Homer were really going to get a divorce, but I will say to David Merkin's credit, he was going for a more realistic feel here, and I think this definitely succeeds where some of the past episodes that expressed a lot of tension between Marge and Homer didn't.
I would agree with that. I have a little bit of issue with how quickly things wrap up like they have in past marriage tension episodes. But that just seems to be kind of a staple with this thing because Marge is just such an outstanding person.
Yeah, and again, of the episodes that we could compare this to, I think this one has the best, most believable Simpsons reset, even if it does feel very rushed like many others
For
do.
the worst reasons.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you definitely should not base your marriage off of this one. Absolutely not.
But I totally buy it for this, though. You totally buy it for this, but we're about to get there.
We are. And the next scene is actually one of the most touching scenes, and then a very funny scene as well. But before you get the reveal that Homer's actually in the backseat talking through a tube, this is a very kind of painful moment for Marge. She's driving down the main street of Springfield, and everything she sees and hears reminds her of her husband.
Yeah, she passes a bunch of stores, which I must point out before I say this. There have been a lot of different businesses that have sprung up this season as well all over Springfield, and they're all conveniently funny or relevant to the episode at hand, but, you know, that's Springfield for you. But she passes the Broken House Chimney Repair, the Splitsville Ice Cream Sundaes, and Painful Memories Party Supplies.
And then while she's having this drive, she's also hearing voices in her head, or at least we think she's hearing Homer's voice in her head. And it's a really well done voice, the way they do this. It very much mimics how a real movie or a movie might treat this exact subject matter, where it's a very sorrowful voice. She hears Homer say, "I love you. Will you marry me, Marge? You mean I'm gonna be a daddy? I hope we'll always be together. Together. Together." But that's when Marge leans over the back seat and sees that Homer is just saying these things through a paper towel roll for the desired voice effect.
And somehow he gets thrown out of the car when she skids around the corner. I don't know how that happens, but it works for the moment.
In yet another instance where Homer tries to traumatize his children, Lisa visits Homer in his treehouse and says, "Dad, I brought you some nice..." And we see Homer has now shaped a potted plant with a paper plate face to replace Marge.
Good news, Lisa. I don't need your mother anymore. I've created a replacement for her that's superior in almost every way.
As he starts to clip away some branches, Lisa responds, "Dad, that's just a plant."
Lisa, you will respect your new mother. Now give her a kiss. Kiss her.
And in his insistence of making Lisa give his fake plant mother a kiss, he actually ends up dropping it and it smashes on the ground.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. All right, let's get the story straight. She tripped, right?
Lisa tries to force an awkward smile here and says, "Dad, look, I brought you some nice pudding."
Ah, your flesh mother used to bring me pudding.
The phrase "flesh mother" gets me every time, too.
That was a good one.
Homer, realizing how smart his daughter is, tries to ask her for some advice, but all Lisa can really say is, "You can't trick somebody into loving you. There's some reason you and Mom have been together this whole time, and you just have to find that special something you give each other that nobody else can."
I'll give you $40 if you can think of it for me.
No.
Okay, 30.
Good luck, Dad.
And I just wanted to say before we continue here that the first time I saw this episode, I was so sure after that talk with Lisa that Homer was going to figure it out and it was going to be this huge grand gesture. Like, you just know that's the way it's going to wrap up because that's serialized sitcom television, however you want to call it, that he's got the kick in the butt he needs, so now he's gonna pull out his grand gesture, and it's gonna be magnificent. We'll see how that plays out in a little while, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
That would have been the normal response in a sitcom, but instead we get another great sequence with Homer talking to his brain.
All right, brain, it's all up to you. If you don't think of what it is, we'll lose Marge forever.
Eat the pudding, 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 eat the pudding.
Okay, but then we gotta get to work.
And another example where Homer's trying to do the right thing, but his brain just can't get past the food in its way.
You gotta give Homer credit, though, because he can think two different thoughts at the exact same time, so...
Arguably, you might be worried in this case that he's got, like, split personalities or a bit of schizophrenia.
Or he's just ADHD, maybe.
Yeah, he's the poster child for that.
I wasn't gonna go that route, but yeah. Or he's just a super genius, so he can think multiple thoughts at once.
Yeah, just think if that crayon got out of the way, what he could offer the world. Probably eat the pudding.
He could finish his poker statements before the poker game ends.
There you go. It doesn't take much time for the residents of Springfield to hear that Marge and Homer are having problems and not living under the same roof.
Literally, like, maybe an hour.
Yeah, like, less than a day, for sure. Moe shows up at the door and declares to Marge he knows about her and Homer, and he's stating his intentions that he's trying to move in on her. He even brought her some posies.
Oh, my. I'm very flattered, but I'm not really interested.
Oh, geez, I come here, I get dressed up all nice-like, put my heart on the line, and make a fool of myself. Oh, boy, I'm gonna start bawling here.
Oh, why don't you come inside for a drink of water?
Okay.
And like I alluded to earlier in this episode, I believe this is the first time that Moe straight up takes a pass at Marge, or
at old
makes
Midge.
A pass at Marge, yeah. But he doesn't say Midge yet, so that's going to come later.
That is going to come later. I actually just really appreciate the things that Moe appreciates about the Simpsons home, such as it's clean and there's no silverfish. He could be very happy here. And also, like I pointed out earlier, Homer actually shows up in this moment and has absolutely no idea how much of a dirtbag Moe is being to him as a supposed friend. He immediately starts balking, though. Homer, I never touched her. Homer, I swear, I never touched her.
Here's your water, Moe.
I didn't ask for no water. She's lying, Homer. She's lying. I told you. She told me you were dead. That's the only reason I didn't do nothing. And he flees through the kitchen window.
Bye, Moe.
So casual. Just like nothing happened special at all in that moment. His friends must just regularly leave through the kitchen window.
He's just focused on the thing that matters most in this episode.
A woman like Marge.
And the posies.
We talked about it a moment ago. This is our moment of truth where we get to our Simpsons reset. Homer has figured out what he can give Marge that nobody else can. A bouquet of posies. Until he realizes that Moe has already brought one. And that's when maybe the most heartbreaking line in the episode occurs. Homer realizes he doesn't deserve Marge, and he says, I give up, before walking away, dragging the coffee table behind him on his tattered rags.
He literally says, I don't deserve to live with you.
Yeah, it's a dark moment. He even cries a little that his tattered rags caught on the coffee table, but Marge steps in to help, like she always does.
Oh, here, let me help you.
Wait a minute. Wait, that's it. I know what I can offer you that no one else can. Complete and utter dependence.
Homer, that's not a good thing.
Are you kidding? It's a wondrous, marvelous thing, Marge. I need you more than anyone on this entire planet could possibly ever need you. I need you to take care of me, to put up with me, and most of all, I need you to love me, 'cause I love you.
But how do I know I can trust you?
Marge, look at me. We've been separated for a day, and I'm as dirty as a Frenchman. In another few hours, I'll be dead, and I can't afford to lose your trust again. Marge actually thinks about this for just a moment, but it doesn't take her long to take Homer back into her arms.
I must admit, you really do make a gal feel needed.
Wait till my class hears about this. Kidding.
Maybe wait a little longer next time, Homer.
Yeah, I'm all for the jokes, and I'll even admit I often am the one that makes the inappropriate joke too
I was going to say,
early.
we would both make this joke that fast. We both would do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get my mouth in a lot of trouble by doing that all the time.
Your mouth tries to cash checks or your mouth writes checks that your butt can't cash?
Pretty much on a constant level. That always happens to me. And I think the jokes are hilarious. People are just too damn sensitive. But Homer is just excited to be back indoors with his family. He's no longer dirty as a Frenchman living in his son's treehouse, and the whole family is actually really glad to see him. Lisa's happy his dad didn't screw it up. And Bart and Homer even have one of their Simpsonian sweet moments here where Bart says, "Look, Dad, I missed you so much I couldn't concentrate in school and I got an F."
Hey, this is dated 2 weeks ago.
Oh, sorry. Here's a fresh one.
Which is funny considering they call Homer slow, but he immediately picked up on that.
True. Speaking of slow, there's a little bit more proof of that later to come, because Marge also has a special present for him, but it's something that she'll give him later tonight. Wink, wink.
Special present? I don't want to wait. I want it now. I want the children to see. Oh, right. Later.
I love that. I want the children to see before he realizes his mistake.
When I was a kid, that was my favorite moment of this episode, just because it was so dirty.
For a kid, it's like a perfect dirty joke. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Especially when you're right at the age where you're just getting what they mean.
Yeah. And
finally, we get one last appearance of Mo, who just wants to make sure Marge is really happy. Really?
Hey, Mo.
Ah! And Mo flees the scene. Once again, Homer is just super casual with him, just saying hello to a friend. But Mo knows what he's doing, so he quickly gets out of Dodge. And that brings us to the end of Secrets of a Successful Marriage, and to the end of the 5th season of The Simpsons. Richie, is there anything else that you or that book want to point out about this episode?
Well, my book, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, points out that Homer, when he was sleeping in the treehouse, was sleeping in a burlap sack labeled U.S. Mail.
That ties into that joke we got earlier with throwing the mail in the sewers or whatever it was.
It's all connected. And then also it pointed out that in Lenny's How to Chew Tobacco class, it's attended by Otto, Groundskeeper Willie, Abe, Captain McAllister, which is the sea captain, Hans Moleman, Jasper, and the Crazy Old Man. And I'm not sure who the Crazy Old Man is, but that's who they listed in there, so I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Which, conveniently, a lot of those people were teaching other classes, too. So it seems like everyone's just there to teach at one time and then go to everyone else's classes. So it's a very, very up-and-coming little center there for teaching. But other than that, on a personal note, not one of my favorite episodes, but in context of what you touched on earlier, in talking about Marge and Homer's marriage, it's probably a little bit higher on the chain of marital issues that they go through, just because there's real big highs and real low lows in this episode. I've always felt like when Homer captivates his students, you feel really, really good for him, but for the worst reasons, because you're like, oh, you should have said that, Homer, but I'm happy that you're doing so well. And then you really feel Marge's pain and mistrust of Homer. Like, you don't blame her at all for the way that she behaves in this episode. I want to make that very clear. You're totally on Marge's side, but you always want them to find their connection to each other, because that's where most of the heart in the series comes from that aspect, besides the parent relationship with the kids.
But yeah, you're totally right. There's more heart with the relationship between Marge and Homer. Maybe you could argue Homer and Lisa have some exceptionally sweet moments as well, but all in all, this is a heart-heavy episode. We talk a lot that there's many things that go into making The Simpsons a great show. Yes, it's hilarious, one of the funniest cartoons of all time, but it also brings an emotional punch, and this is one of those episodes that has a pretty heavy emotional range to it. I would say I agree. It's not necessarily my favorite episode of the season at all. In fact, it probably, spoiler alert, won't make my top 5 for next week. But if I were, if I were ranking it amongst other Marge and Homer marital problem episodes, I think it would probably be at the top of the list at this point. We'll see if that holds up as we get to many more to come.
My thing about this episode that always makes me mad at myself, because I totally buy it, is I buy Homer's reasoning at the end of this episode. I absolutely buy it. Like, he always, every time I see this one, he talks me into agreeing with him, and I always hate myself for that, because I feel like he kind of traps Marge almost. But he's absolutely right. No one else he won't break her trust because he absolutely can't afford to. Like, he needs her in every shape of the meaning of it.
We should keep track on how many episodes it takes before Homer breaks Marge's trust again, though, because honestly, you know it's coming. I haven't looked to see what the first episode of next season is yet. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure it won't take long.
Bart of Darkness.
Well, there you go. We'll see how long it lasts. But that is it for Season 5 of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show.
Whoa, Miles. Calm your tits, sir. We have one more episode of Season 5 to get through.
Oh, yeah?
I think it'll be quite spectacular.
I promise I will totally not balk and try to postpone my top 5, bottom 1. We're going to get it right out of the way, right off the bat next week. First thing you're going to hear when you tune into the show, I'm quite confident. But we will be having our...
By the way, that's Miles breaking all of your trust right now. Be forewarned.
But we will be having our Season 5 finale, Spectacular.
Spectacular. He'll get it one day, folks.
We once again want to thank all of you so much for tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show each and every week with us. It means a lot to us that you join us on this journey through one of our favorite shows of all time. We will be back to celebrate the 5th season. We'll be talking David Merkin. We'll be talking Last for Minute. We'll talk about the changes that have occurred, and we'll be talking about what we might be expecting going into the 6th season. So come back and join us next week.
And as always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWizKid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at BestDarnDiddly. That's DIDDLY, which also works on Instagram and Facebook.
You can follow me at MrMostDaysOff. That is also going to work pretty much everywhere. Also, please take a moment and go subscribe to us on YouTube. We are getting really close to triple digits on that, which opens up some more available things to us, so you can really help us out a lot. Otherwise, make sure you come back and join us next week.
Definitely, come back and join us next week. We'll be here. That's right, Richie McCool and Milesbot.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
What's up, UFOnauts? It's your UFO guy, Rob Christofferson. Have you ever been curious about the UFO phenomenon, but unsure of where to start? Have you ever wondered about just what crashed at Roswell? Have you ever wanted common sense advice about licking UFOs? The answer's don't. Then check out the Our Strange Skies podcast, where we dive into America's rich UFO history and uncover what these sightings say about ourselves. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and most podcast apps, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget to look up, because you never know what you'll find in our strange skies. In Gray we trust.